YouTube, how's it going? The Goat House is back. Today I'm going over my top remaining free agents and their most likely landing spot. Going over 15 free agents here. Hopefully one of these guys doesn't sign while I'm talking. That'll be my luck here, but hopefully they start signing soon because it's a little quiet out there right now after a crazy week last week. We have signing grades for pretty much all the signings that happened so far. There's some recent ones we still have to go over. We also have a spreadsheet with all of them updated too. You can find a link pinned in the comments for that. Join us on our channel, like, subscribe to notifications on. Full NFL draft coverage. A recent mock draft will be live during day one of the NFL draft. Follow us on Twitter for live news, rumors, updates. Very important to follow that. Links pinned in the comments for that. Discord, GLD Shop, our sponsor. I have their Chiefs chain on right now. They have more NFL teams. Liquid IV, they have a new flavor there. And then Walk the Mock. Those are our sponsors. There's links pinned in the comments for all of that. So the first one, Bobby Wagner, going back perhaps to the Seattle Seahawks. I think it's a strong possibility. Some other teams I thought could be in on an inside linebacker like Bobby Wagner, but they kind of filled that hole there. Seahawks did add Devin Bush. It's only a 1-year deal. It's, a little bit of a mystery on how he'll be, and they do have Jordan Brooks obviously in there as well, but I think they could get Bobby Wagner back. Maybe he's not getting the money he thought he would get elsewhere or as a free agent. I think the Eagles and the Bills are a possibility if he just wants more of a contender, if he's going to take a cheap deal anyways, but I also think Seahawks are doing a pretty good job in free agency. They were pretty good last year, better than expected. They could be pretty damn good again. If he's going to take a cheaper deal, why not go to the Seahawks, back where he started? So, or maybe he doesn't take a cheaper deal, and I guess the Seahawks could pay a little bit. But yeah, I thought they're the most likely landing spot. There was talk about the Cowboys. They brought Van Der Esch back since then. I guess that doesn't confirm anything. I thought the Lions were a great landing spot. They pretty quickly brought back Anzalone, which he was decent for them, but I was a little surprised that they would kind of upgrade there. But the Seahawks are my favorite fit / most likely landing spot for Bobby Wagner. For Odell Beckham Jr. is a tough one because my favorite fit is between the Chiefs, my favorite actual fit, how he fits in system wise. Chiefs versus Vikings, maybe Vikings with Kevin O'Connell. Pass first team now. Really, I think would be a really good replacement for Adam Thielen. But between the two of them, I think the Chiefs right now maybe a little more likely. They've been mentioned as a legit team kind of after Odell. I do see them possibly trading for DeAndre Hopkins as well. I don't think they would do both, but you never know. The Chiefs actually do have a little bit of spending money. So I think they're the most likely landing spot. We thought the Cowboys were. They trade for Brandon Cooks. Does that 100% remove them from this conversation? I'd say no, not 100%. You look at the Ravens. Does Odell want to go there when they don't know what their quarterback situation? The Ravens want to make splash moves when they don't know their quarterback situation. I mean, that may be a reason why they don't have any new additions yet. They did bring in Nelson Aguilar for a visit. That's the wrong receiver. I mean, it's a decent receiver. It's cheaper, so it could make sense, but it's not this receiver. The Jets been mentioned. Maybe a possibility. The Bills as well. I'm going to go with the Chiefs as most likely. Let's see what happens first between Odell and a DeAndre Hopkins trade and see if, whatever one happens first. Do they go to the Chiefs? If not, the second one, the other one, I think could end up on feeling pretty good that the second one could end up on the Chiefs there. So Odell Beckham Jr. for the Chiefs. But again, in terms of actual system fit, I mean, any good receiver fits with the Chiefs, but I do like the Vikings I think they were going to be in on Odell, and they still could be, but if he was a little bit cheaper, on the cheaper side there, but and it came out that he's not really looking for $20 million, but he's still going to be a little expensive there. Next, Frank Clark. I had a debate with myself on this one as well here. More, this one in terms of the actual most likely landing spot / prediction. I'm gonna go with the Saints. So I was leaning Falcons just because the Falcons they've had a pretty good free agency. They got better out there for sure. They made some big moves. I don't think they're done yet, but on top of making those big moves and getting better, they desperately need edge help. I mean, they could use 2 starters in there. They got some guys that can play. They can maybe live with 1 starter, but just to prove the point, they could use 2 starters in there. So I thought, maybe they have to get a guy like Frank Clark. And I don't know if they're really too worried about getting young guys, and they're fine with veterans. So I really like the Falcons for Frank Clark as well. Maybe I have somebody else in mind for them. I like the Texans for Frank Clark as well. That was kind of my deciding factor. Another team like the Falcons, the Bears desperately need to add an edge rusher. I think they're a little different than the Falcons. So the Falcons just trying to get the best players. The Bears like to have good players too, but maybe they're kind of sticking to the younger guys right now because they're kind of still in that rebuild process. The Falcons a little bit further along. So I was thinking the other strong options here, Falcons and Texans. I want the Saints, though. Saints actually have some spending money. I don't think Frank Clark would be ridiculously expensive, and he could go back to the Chiefs. I was kind of saying that for a while. So that's a possibility as well. Even though that almost like they said their goodbyes, but I thought right when they cut him, I was like, he's gonna go back to Chiefs still. But then they kind of said their goodbyes almost. It was just like a Twitter post. That doesn't mean a whole lot. But I do like the Saints. They lost Marcus Davenport. They're always looking for pass rush help. Cam Jordan's still a baller, but he's getting up there in age. So they might need somebody else out there as well. Peyton Turner maybe has a little bit of injury concern. Passing, they got back. He's an underrated player. And Granderson. So they have a number of guys, but I think they're always looking to get better at the position and maybe looking for another starter opposite of Cam Jordan here. So I can kind of just see it. This was a tough one. I can change my mind at any given time between. I'm kind of going Saints or Falcons on this one, but again, Texans, Chiefs. Those are decent possibilities as well. I was kind of looking for like a new with these guys in this video, sending them to a new team, but I do think it's possible he goes back to the Chiefs. But Saints or Falcons, back and forth. I'd like to see the veteran on the Saints there. They have some spending money. They got to zero to be able to. That's the rule. You have to get to zero in terms of cap space. You have to under the cap, I should say. But then they cleared some extra space to make a little bit more moves here. This is kind of the time they start striking the second or third week of free agency. So I'd watch out for them. Maybe starting to get a little sneaky. They already brought in a Chief too, and Kalen Saunders too, that's kind of a sneaky signing. So we will see. Next, Leonard Floyd. I was kind of predicting this for a bit. Sending him to the Panthers. They kind of switched to more of a 3-4, bringing in Ejiro Evero, the Broncos defense coordinator, former defensive coach on the LA Rams, so familiar with Leonard Floyd. They have Brian Burns, who's scheme versatile. He can fit, the old 4-3, or he's going to fit the new defense as well. He's that good, so he'll be fine. And the opposite, they need somebody, the opposite side, I should say. And Leonard Floyd fits that in Evero's defense. They need a guy. They have some spending money. They have a lot of future money they can use. They've been, looking at Thielen's deal. They add some void years so they can save some money for right now. So I still like Leonard Floyd to the Panthers here. Another one for the Panthers, DJ Chark, which I've been predicting as well. And we knew, since then they brought him in for a visit. Nothing's happened yet. You'd think something would have happened, but Thielen, it was days after he went in for a visit and they signed him. So same thing could be with Chark. So far, I like what the Panthers are doing. They can do even more than I like. If my predictions are right, they're bringing Leonard Floyd, DJ Chark, two guys I've been pegging to them since the start of free agency. On top of Thielen, on top of Hayden Hurst, on top of Miles Sanders. That looks pretty good in terms of the collection of weapons they brought into. You don't even want to say replace DJ Moore, but then and some as well. I mean, nobody on that list is as talented as DJ Moore, but they did a hell of a job here. If this is the case, I still kind of like what they're doing because then they're going to get the top quarterback in the draft too, unless they blow it. I don't think they will. But yeah, 2 for the Panthers there. I got another team coming up. I got 2 more teams coming up that get 2 guys. Chargers. That is one of the teams. Chargers, I got getting John Johnson was my prediction from early on, and then it was reported on the first day of free agency. Once John Johnson's officially released, they will show interest. I haven't heard much about that since, but I expect that to be the case still. They could use a free safety. Nasir Adderley was a free agent, but he retired anyways, and they could get better from that spot anyways. They did draft JT Woods, a solid, rangy free safety from Baylor last draft, I should say. They do have some versatile safeties. Derwin James more of a strong safety. Gilman's kind of a do-it-all type guy, but they could be looking for a starting free safety. John Johnson played under Brandon Staley when he was with the Rams before Johnson was on the Browns, before Staley was with the Chargers, obviously. So that makes sense. I think he's a pretty good free safety. Didn't really work out in Cleveland. It doesn't mean he was at all bad there. But yeah, he kind of fit, the Rams that cover 4, a little bit of man here and there scheme. And that's what we'll see from the Chargers and Brandon Staley here. So I think it's just a kind of a perfect fit, a need. They actually have some spending money right now. And it's kind of something I felt good from the start, and there was kind of rumors linking them after that anyways, so that makes sense. Another one for the Chargers. This one kind of makes sense with the coaching connections as well. Ezekiel Elliott, It was weird just calling him Ezekiel. I think I've always called him, like out loud, I think I've always said Zeke or Zeke Elliott. And that's a sick picture, by the way. Yeah, I could see him with the Chargers, and maybe that'll be tough because, well, I guess you never know. Eckler is seeking a trade. I just get the feeling Eckler is going to be with the Chargers still, just because he's kind of, not only does he have to seek a trade, but he has to seek, like, all right, who's going to pay me what the Chargers aren't going to be paying me? And the Chargers might be open to paying him, maybe just not as much as he wants. So I think he's going to realize what happened in the market, specifically the running back market. But they're going to need a 1-2 punch. They were limited running the ball last year because they were limited with a bunch of carries on, inside, which Eckler just can't. He can handle here and there, but he's not going to get like 20 total carries on the inside. He's just not that guy. So they could use a guy like Zeke, who, he's declined and people rip him a bit, but what people don't realize, he's still actually one of the better short yardage running backs in football. So he hasn't really lost that. Like, if you need a yard, he's going to go get it, and on the goal line too. So Kellen Moore, connection there. He knows the value of having that 1-2 punch. So I could definitely see them having Eckler and Elliott, and maybe they move on from Eckler, and then they could use another one as well. I mean, they have Isaiah Spiller. I wasn't a huge Isaiah Spiller guy, but maybe he steps up, and he could be that short yardage physical guy. Maybe they have big plans for him, so maybe they're not looking for a guy like this because they have a guy like that. But they have some spending money, actually. That they cleared their way out of having negative, but they didn't stop. They kept going, and now you're kind of waiting for them to make moves. They got Kendricks but lost Tranquil. You're kind of waiting for them to do a little bit here. Zeke could be one, but could Zeke be more interested in going to a place where, like, yes, that's the starter? But does he have that? I think a lot of people kind of think that Zeke maybe thinks like that. We don't really know that. He was good sharing with Pollard. He could be good sharing with Eckler there. Eagles, Adrian Amos. I like Amos for the Eagles, actually. I like very possibly go back to the Packers. I don't think he really fits what they were trying to do last year. They kind of switched things up last year. I mean, they used to be like a cover 2 and a cover 4 defense, mainly cover 2, and Amos was really good at that. And last year, they were actually a bottom 5 team in amount of times they were in cover 2, and that's kind of Amos's game there, making sure anything didn't happen here. All right, we're good. Packers defense was pretty. It was a little underwhelming early in the year, but they got going late in the year, and they got some young studs on their team. So I would imagine they want to continue to run what they're running. So does that make Amos like a non-fit? But they're kind of running out of options. So do they just bring him back for a year anyways? The Packers, that is. And then I do like the Steelers a lot. I like the Steelers a lot as a fit. I really thought about Pittsburgh here, and we'll talk about the Steelers actually in a little bit, but. They're more of a man coverage team usually. They did bring in Patrick Peterson, who's been running cover 2 recently. Usually when the corners get up there in age, they don't play man anymore because it's about chasing guys around for the most part, and the older guys can't really handle that. So are they gonna shift a little bit more zone? Could they go cover 2, and then they could bring Amos in to play strong safety, and then maybe he could fit that little more than a guy like Edmonds, perhaps. So I thought about the Steelers. The Rams, he would fit the Rams, but are they looking to make moves like this? I mean, he might be pretty cheap, but the Rams are a team I'm watching for. The Chiefs brought in Mike Edwards, though. I do like the fit. I'll go Eagles, though. The Eagles, honestly could use 2 safeties. Last year they ran a bit of cover 2, but they bring in Sean Desai. I think he'll run a little bit of that. He's familiar with Amos when he was in Chicago, so that also makes sense. And he could end up being a lot cheaper than the name Adrian Amos there. So that's we're at that point of free agency where good players are going to be cheaper. It's just how it is. So cheaper than C.J. Gardner-Johnson, even though he's a different style player. So I can see the fit there, and there's kind of a connection again. With a lot of it is about connections these days, especially when guys are sitting around not finding a landing spot. Let me go do a 1-year prove-it deal with a coach that I know, that I trust, that I'm familiar with their scheme, so it makes some sense there. So that's why I liked Amos to the Eagles. There's the Steelers. We're going to talk about the Steelers with 2 players here. Donovan Smith. Donovan Smith's a tough one because my original prediction was the Patriots, and I still do like the Patriots, but they bring in Riley Reif. They have Trent Brown, and I can definitely see them drafting one as well. It's a possibility. So what, do they think they're set until the draft? Then they're make that move, or do they think they could add somebody else? So I do like Donovan Smith for the Patriots, but maybe a little less likely now. I do like the Jets. They've kind of been in the market for left tackles, but they might be a go big or go home, or go draft, I should say. I go big or go draft. What I mean by that, they were in on a guy like Orlando Brown, I heard, or they, maybe made an offer. Maybe they weren't super serious, but they're like, hey, there's an opportunity to get a lot better there. But if we can't get him, let's not get one of these guys, because we do have, Dwayne Brown and Mekhi Becton. And we do have Elijah Vera Tucker, who's a guard, but that can play tackle. And then we have the draft coming up, and then we're in a pretty good spot to maybe get one of those top guys. So maybe the Jets wouldn't be in. I think they could be in on Jonah Williams, possibly. But I could see the fit with Donovan Smith, but maybe for the reasons I just explained, they're not, or maybe they won't be. Maybe the Colts, the Rams. I mean, some of these other teams you can list. If he's good at playing right tackle, then maybe the Bears, a team like that. But the Steelers make a lot of sense. They were also, I heard they were in on Orlando Brown, unless they checked in on it. That's kind of the last piece they need on that offensive line, is a left tackle. It feels like they might be in position to draft one. They may have to move up a little bit to get the right guy, perhaps, but there still could be a decent one there. But the draft's pretty unpredictable, and they sit in the middle of the first round, so maybe just go get a guy right now, just in case. You have a little bit of money. You haven't spent a whole lot. I think you could fit at left tackle. And Donovan Smith's one of those guys that gets ripped a little bit, but he's still an experienced, decent tackle. He was pretty good that year, the Super Bowl run year. It's definitely an upgrade for the Steelers, so that makes sense as a fit. And then one more for the Steelers, a familiar face, Bud Dupree, who was released by the Titans. He wasn't released right away. It was actually a little more than a few days in, actually, I thought, into free agency. So he's a fairly new free agent, technically. And there's already been some talk about this, and I definitely can see it. He was really good with the Steelers. He was good with the Titans, too, when he was on the field. Just durability issues. Like, he's very, very talented. I think you can kind of get creative with him as well as a pass rusher, alignment-wise. And I think he kind of creates for the other players on the defense. So I think his last year on the Steelers, too, he was having an insane year until he got injured. So they could definitely bring him back. I mean, I could see teams like, if the Panthers can't get Leonard Floyd, I can definitely see the Panthers. I can see the Seahawks perhaps as well, but I do like him going back to the Steelers here, a fairly newer free agent because how late the Titans cut him. Next, Falcons, Yannick Ngakoue. I like earlier in this video, I said I like Frank Clark for the Falcons. They need a pass rusher bad. They might need more than one, but they need one in free agency. They need one in the draft. It's kind of the way I look at it. So I could see Frank Clark, maybe a little bit of a younger route here, a little bit, and then, go Yannick Ngakoue, who's still sitting around a little bit, not going to get a lot of money. He's a pretty decent pass rusher, struggles a little bit versus the run. It seems like a lot of those teams they want to get a pass rusher, but they also want to do better stopping the run, so maybe he's not for them. But the Falcons, desperately need a pass rusher out there. I could see him as a fit in that new look defense, but they could be in on a guy like Frank Clark. They're bringing in Calais Campbell for a visit. He's been more of a 3-4 end, but throughout his career, he's almost like slid out as an edge, sometimes playing D tackle. He's probably, it's tough because they have Grady Jarrett, they have David Onyemata, Eddie Goldman came out of retirement. I don't know if he's part of their plans, like big plans. If they bring in Campbell, it almost feels like, they're, what are they going to run? They might change up their looks a little bit. So that's interesting. And Campbell's up there in age too. So they're just looking for good ball players right now, the Falcons. So, but I could see Ngakoue, some of those other pass rush needy teams I could see as well. I thought about the Bears, but I don't know. I don't think the Bears will love that he struggles a little bit stopping the run. The Bears need to stop the run more than anything. I mean, they need some pass rushers though. Could handle that in the draft perhaps. They might need it now and the draft like the Falcons. It's just weird the Colts brought him in when Eberflus left, like he wasn't a fit before, because he's always been available, but then he was with Gus Bradley, so I thought the Falcons made a little more sense. Maybe it could be swapped. My Falcons and Saints, it could be Frank Clark to the Falcons, Yannick Ngakoue to the Saints. That's possible as well. So some interesting pass rushers to look out for. A little different than the 3-4 pass rushers we talked about. Leonard Floyd, more of a 3-4 guy. I had going to the Panthers in this video. And then Bud Dupree's more of a 3-4, a unique type pass rusher. I had him going to the Steelers. We were just talking about that. And then next, we got Punam Ford. The Bills make some sense. Other teams that missed out on D tackles, I mean, the Raiders need to get a defensive tackle in there. The Bears need to get somebody that got a nose tackle. Punam Ford could play both. I said Raiders. I said Bears. Lions. I was surprised the Lions didn't add something. The Lions make a lot of sense as well. The Bills are looking to get better on the interior. They have guys that, a little more expectations on them. Just been a little underwhelming. But they always are a little cheap, especially with that position as well. But Punam Ford kind of still sitting around. He could be cheap, and he's kind of an upgrade. So I thought that made some sense. Probably my favorite fits. But, could a team that could spend a little bit more end up with them? The Lions, when I said them, that kind of made some sense. But the Raiders, Bears, could the Vikings sneak in there? Could you can list off quite a few teams. Honestly, could he go back to Seahawks? They add Draymond Jones as a different type of defensive lineman, so he could go back there. But I like the Bills as a fit. That's a tough one to actually predict, though. I almost argued other teams just as much as the Bills on that one. And then we got Marcus Peters, which was my original prediction. I could see a few teams here. Raiders make sense. Vikings trying to run man coverage. They added Byron Murphy. They can add one more. Steelers definitely makes sense. We already talked about Steelers enough in this one. I like the Giants, though. Marcus Peters familiar with playing man coverage, and he's familiar with the coach, the defensive coach, Don Martindale. So that makes sense as a pretty good fit. And he's sitting around, so it makes sense to, let me go play for my guy Martindale there, my guy Wink. Maybe it's a 1-year deal, maybe it's 2. But the Giants could use another outside corner. They signed Bobby McCain just right before recording this. That's more of your Julian Love type guy, where he's like a safety, but he plays a lot in the slot. So that's kind of that replacement. They could use another outside corner here, good fit in that defense and familiar with it, that exact defense. Nicole Hardman, Packers got to do something. Packers got to do something here. They've been clearing money, and just haven't really done anything. You expect them to kind of strike at some point. Maybe the Rodgers situation's holding them back a little bit, perhaps, but they kind of know they're going to trade him eventually, obviously. But they could use a receiver. They want Jordan Love to work out. Let's get him some weapons. Maybe they're saying, kind of a. The only downside with something predicting something like this is maybe they already had. It's a different player. It's like different but the same, if that makes sense. With Christian Watson, like a speedy guy that you kind of can get creative with, like end arounds and screen passes with. Like, do they need another one of those guys? But Hardman, when he's healthy, is does a little bit more. He's kind of a deep ball guy, underneath guy at the same time. Maybe they can play him in a slot a little bit, because Watson and Dubs are like more so outside guys. Packers got to do something here. Hardman's tough to predict because, like, not too many teams want. A lot of teams might just view him as a gadget guy, like a high-end gadget guy. I think it could be a little bit more than that, but he did have the durability issues last year. Could that scare teams away? He's probably asking for too much money, but so he's a tough one to predict. Packers got to make some sort of splash move here. I could definitely see the Ravens. I could see the Vikings perhaps looking for a receiver, maybe a little expensive. Maybe one of the better receivers available. We talked about DJ Chark, and obviously Odell's the big one here. Packers got to do something here. They got to do something. So send them to the Packers, which is my original prediction as well, but it's a tough one to predict. And then one more, Kareem Hunt. About the Cardinals, I think they could be looking for another running back. They do have James Conner, and I like Keontae Ingram, but they could be looking for another one. Remember, they kind of changed they really changed their scheme based on the coaching staff they bring in. They bring in Pensing, who's quarterback coach for the Browns, so he's going to run that similar West Coast style offense. A lot of outside zone running game, and there's a guy that was on the Browns, and Kareem Hunt, that fits that style quite a bit. And Connor's been more of like a power, man scheme type runner. Not that he can't do it; he'll still be the starter probably. But they could bring in Kareem Hunt on a 1-year deal. He was probably looking to get more money, and he can kind of do a prove it situation. Connor, maybe he doesn't fit perfectly like Hunt does, and then he does have the injury concern. And the last staff also drafted Ingram, which he could work out as well too, because I do like the kind of underrated sleeper talent there. But Hunt makes sense as a fit. There's a connection there with the coach. Again, more of a fit than what they've got. They kind of need somebody else. Are they interested in making these types of moves? This is a 1-year deal. You can help you this year, maybe gain a compensatory pick next year. I thought that made some sense there. So those were some 15 of the top remaining free agents and where they could land. We'll see if any of these happen. A lot of these fit. Some of these guys were tougher. Like I mentioned, a few teams for these guys. Kareem Hunt, if I'm going to mention, I could see the Eagles, I could see the Rams if they're interested in picking anybody up. Teams, the Chargers, they don't go Zeke. Cowboys just got Ronald Jones. I don't know if that kind of ends anything for them. They could still be looking, but we'll see. But that wraps this one up. Always talking with you guys about free agency on our Twitter at GoDallasNFL. There's a link pinned in the comments. Make sure you like, subscribe to notifications on. It'd be much appreciated. Go over our channel. Check out our recent videos. You won't be disappointed. We cover everything NFL. Any link you're looking for, pinned in the comments. It's going to do it. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.